Perfect.
All right, we are live.
All righty. Wayne,
We're gonna go ahead and
it's
start.
you.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Call the meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is approved February 17th meeting agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Have a motion. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Next thing on the agenda is approved January 20th, 26th meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Can I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. Have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Public comment. Anybody got anything this morning?
I don't think there's any public online.
There's not.
All right, next thing on the agenda is applications for VAD and EVAD.
Okay, this looks a little different than last time. We're changing the way we're doing the tables, but it's the same information. We have 9 applications. They're all VAD renewals. We sent out those renewal letters at the beginning of the year. We've gotten a few responses. But yeah, they're all people who are already in the program. They're just renewing their 10-year agreement with us.
And so just so like new board members know, typically January, February, we do a renewal for those applications that are going to expire within that year. So it's a VAD and EVAD are 10-year agreements. So we check who's going to expire that year and then reach out so that they can get back in the program.
And then, so which townships does the Carlin in?
Let me pull it up.
Oh, that's somewhere in the Weaverville area or north of Weaverville. I need magnifying glass.
It is smaller. Yeah.
That's tough to see. Okay, because it's Aiken Road. Oh, that's the mailing address. The street address is called Buick.
It's west of Weaverville.
Yeah, we can do landscape next
Yeah, I
time.
thought it had done that, but maybe when it printed it done something funny, but they were supposed to be that page is supposed to be landscapes.
So these are all renewals.
Correct.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
of those.
Already in the program, just giving them another 10 years of protection.
Okay, and just for my memory, so we don't have a minimum acreage, real with the.
Right. So as it is right now, it is so it's a combination, either 50 acres or within 1 mile of 50 acres that are in the program. So it creates these kind of district regions. So yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't have to be that landowner. It could be in proximity within a mile of 50 acres of anyone else's.
Correct.
Just
Mhm.
just thanks.
So maybe it's within a mile of 2 25-acre parcels. That's also, makes it eligible. Yeah.
And then just for my memory too, then is there anything else that's required of them for the VAD?
Yes. Yeah. So they have to be actively either in the present use value program or actively engaged in agriculture as defined by the state. So if it is a smaller parcel doesn't meet those PUV requirements, but they're raising honeybees on 5 acres and they're still within, a mile of 50 other acres in the program, then they are still eligible. And then the other aspect is that parcel has to have records with the Farm Service Agency and have a highly erodible lands determination. So, and that's through FSA and an RCS. They, essentially make sure that you're not plowing on a steep slope and, causing a lot of severe erosion. So, and typically it's much more complex than that piece that kind of just lightly explained it. But the idea that came around when people were growing crops on really steep fields or what should be in a forest, and they were growing tobacco up the side of a hill. So the Farm Service Agency, the USDA, created these requirements. They went out and surveyed properties and made sure that they had highly erodible land determinations. And so typically those determinations on old farms have already happened. So what we do is we check in with FSA and say, hey, here's the parcel that's applying. Do they have records with you? FSA says, yes, they have records. And we say, do they have an HEL determination? And they say yes. And then we're like, great, you're eligible. If they say no, then we have to reach out to NRCS and get them on a list. And the landowner has to fill out paperwork to request the HEL determination. So that's essentially just saying, all right, these properties are being managed, and not causing erosion, severe erosion.
Okay, thanks for the reminder. It's been a while since I had that straight there. So basically, the within 50 acres PUB are actively as defined by the state and records with the FSA.
Yeah, exactly. And when we get to the ordinance section, I can pull that up on the screen because there's it lines out the like 3 or 4 requirements for FAD in the ordinance.
Motion to approve the renewals.
Do I have a second on that?
Yes.
All right, I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is Farmland Preservation Program report from Eric.
All righty, so let's see, 8 or so that we just approved, Morgan properties all the way through Wilson on that list. They're all starting survey. And then the top 4 are starting the environmental assessment simultaneously. So Martha and I have been out on a lot of properties out in Newfound doing initial survey visits with the landowners and the surveyors. But all that's in the works right now. Goal to get most of these surveys done before leaf comes back on the trees so that it's easier for everyone. And so all that's happening right now. We also just got all of those grant contracts from NCDA approved, and we're starting the county contract process with those grants. So all the matching funds, while we know we have all the AGZ funds kind of secured, each individual project still had to be submitted as an application, and those have now all been approved by the state. So that's exciting. And so just so understand next steps on this batch, in order to do that final easement purchase appraisal, the appraiser has to have a survey draft. So that's why we have to do the survey right now. So the hope is that within a couple months, we have survey drafts, preliminary surveys for all of these, and then we can get that final appraisal. And then at that point, that's when we come back to the commissioners and we've already brought the transaction costs, but we'll bring that final easement purchase request that would be coming from those reserved agricultural growth zone funds. So that's just why we're having to do it in this way, because it's a requirement from the state for their appraisal. Alrighty, but all of that is going really well. We have kind of the next batch of 3 projects: Kestrel Herb, Battle, and Sandy Holler. We had Sandy Holler close last week on February 10th. So that's 165 acres in Sandy Mush protected now. So very exciting that closed. We had Battle and Kestrel on the books for this week and next week, but we've ran into some delays on deed work. So Battle was supposed to close tomorrow, but it's going to be postponed probably a couple weeks. Landowner and his attorney are reviewing the easement deed, and we're having some back and forth attorney to attorney. I don't have any concerns. We just have to tighten up some questions. And then Kestrel Herb has some kind of final, they're doing a recombination survey. So we have to get a recombination deed. So essentially, we have a handful more steps. That's just gonna probably add a few more weeks onto that process
Is
too.
that
So
because they were adding some property
yes,
to it?
yeah, they recently acquired some additional property. They wanted to put in the easements. We had to do a recombination survey, and so they, as landowners, have to pay for a recombination deed so that the recombination survey can reference that deed. And so then once we do that, we can finalize the easement survey, record that, and then add that to all of our documentation. So that's really kind of what's holding it up. So we're just waiting on Mike and Katie to get that recombination deed sorted out. They also have plans to buy out the property from their parents so that they will be the sole owners. And so they'll also do that in the next week or two. And then we'll have to change all the names on all the documents to make sure it's just their ownership. So
And will that probably March, we're looking at closing? date?
yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
So by the end of March.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all exciting too. And just like a note to all of us, those were three bond only funded projects, and commissioners approved the funding for these three February 18th of last year, and we're February 17th. So that is pretty good. That shows that if it's only bond funds, we can pretty much do an easement purchase within the same timeline as a donation easement, because it's just us controlling the process. You throw the state in there, it's gonna add, 6 months to a year more, most likely.
But even with, so yes, that is like the quickest we've really ever
Done an
done
easement
any of
purchase,
these.
yeah.
With the agricultural growth zone, these state projects that we're working on now, that's still gonna be so much quicker than like the typical state process, don't you think?
I don't think, unfortunately, no, because there.
That's part of it, though.
So the app, yes. So the part that was quicker is the part we just went through.
Okay.
So we just submitted all these applications. Took the state about 2 months to review them. Where typically you'd submit an application, you wouldn't hear back that your funding was secured for another year until that fall. So that's really. But once you hit due diligence and you start survey and all the documentation review, I anticipate that being pretty much the same as a normal cycle. But essentially, you shaved a year of the waiting process off.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the due diligence goes. And the other piece of it is, we're starting 8 projects at once, which is more than usually 3 or 4 state funded. So there's going to be some, and we're also the first county that's actually submitted any projects to the state for agricultural growth. So they're figuring out their own process. So I think it took them longer to go through it because they're still sorting out themselves. But yes, so we'll see. This is kind of a test. And yeah. So Okoboji Farm, we were in closing procedures. Nothing's changed since last board meeting. They still have a lawsuit between their neighbor and the HOA, and we heard that they had a court date. We haven't heard anything from the landowner about how that went. I don't think it was resolved, because otherwise they would have responded. So we're still waiting on that piece.
And is the lawsuit just over determined there's a disagreement about where the property line is?
No, unfortunately. So my understanding of the lawsuit is that the neighbor had been renting the agricultural field for many, many years from the HOA.
Okay.
And he's claiming some kind of ownership of it because he was managing it and leasing it from them for like 10 to 15 years. So yeah, that's
Like adverse
Is that like
possession.
waters rights kind
It's
of
called,
thing?
it's called
Really what it- yeah.
adverse possession, and if you, basically, there's like 4 elements to it. It's open and notorious use without the permission of the owner. So basically, yeah, squatters' rights is a way to think of it, but it has to last for like 20 years. And if you do that, then you can ask the court to say it's yours.
But that's
You
not
did
here, right? I mean, he had permission to use it.
Yeah, if you have permission, then yes, permission typically negates any sort of adverse possession because it's not adverse.
But my understanding is that this person used it for many, it could be 20 years. I'm not positive about the number of years. Then the HOA decided to lease it to someone else. And so then he wasn't using it anymore. And this person was very upset that they were leasing it to someone else. And so I think that's when the issue started up.
Well, it's
What's the
somebody's
difference?
property, you can lease it to whomever you want to, I mean, just because.
And he was the person that actually started the HOA. And yes,
So what's the difference in
It
that
sounds messy.
and leasing? In other words, if you're leasing farmland or somebody lets you borrow their farmland and you don't pay them, but they let you use it.
That's the permission part. If you have permission, then everybody's kind of on the same board, on the same page. But if let's say I live next to an empty plot of land, and I just kind of, in 1990, I just started using it as my own. And the other guy, I never asked for permission, but I was open about it. Just kept using it and using it. By the time 2010 rolls around, I can ask a court to declare it mine. It's not a super fair system. It's very old. It's pretty archaic, but adverse possession is still a legal doctrine that does.
But that's on the word. If you were leasing it and paying for it, it wouldn't count.
Right, exactly, because it would still be a recognition that that person owns the property, and you are, basically, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. You're subordinate to their ownership interest. Well, if you just kind of take over for 20 years, then you've been taking care of it. You've been doing everything that's supposed to happen. It happens with people who use cut-throughs on neighbors' properties to get places. Over like 20 years, if nobody says anything, they sort of create this easement
it's like a right of way.
by adverse possession. It can get really messy because the person who owns the property is like, I never said you could do that. And the person who's using the property says, well, yeah, that's kind of the point, but I did. And I've been doing it for 2 decades. And so now I am
So
right.
how do you stop that? Like, what do you do as a property owner?
Put up a no trespassing sign. So just to let them, you make it clear that
They're trespassing.
Yeah, that it's trespassing rather than, or you tell, write them a letter, you can't use this property, you just do something to cut off that 20 years. And it can be, give them permission. It can be, right, I'm giving you permission, you are therefore recognizing that this is my property.
Oh.
So you can cut off the 20, you can do it on the 19th year, 360th day. But it gets really messy once, sometimes these people have been using these properties for decades. And nobody can keep track of when it started.
Yeah.
We've leased our stuff over probably 25, 30 years.
You're safe.
Everybody around us.
No, you're totally safe.
I've heard of this happening where people who farm continue to extend when they disc or plow. They extend 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, and that over the course of 20 years or better, they've extended their acreage into someone else's who didn't
Maintain it or
maintain it, didn't realize someone was inching over on them, and then they end up getting access and being able to potentially have access to the land they've been maintaining little bits at a time.
But it gets messy,
Wow.
and even if you ask a court to declare it's yours, the title is still really cloudy. Like, nobody's gonna wanna buy that if you.
well, and that's the real issue for us.
Right.
Is we couldn't close because then there was a lawsuit against the title of the property, and so we have to sort out that. They have to sort out that so we can have clear title to close the easement.
Wow. We just always end up with some humdinkers, don't we?
We do have some interesting ones.
In the final hour.
Yeah, but to put a little perspective on it, Martha and I attend trainings with the Land Trust Alliance, occasionally just to keep up on the standards and all of that. And so we attended one last week, I guess, and it's not just us. Like, a lot of land trusts are dealing with this all the time. Easement projects are just really complex and stuff comes up. So that's always good for us to see because we're like in a group having, talking about certain issues, and we're seeing, oh wow, yeah, like everyone's dealing with these kinds of issues. So while for us it does feel like another one, it's good to see that, okay, well, it's not, we're not an island. Yeah. Okay, so we'll keep you updated on that. The community farm expansion, my understanding is they're still tying up the loose ends, but we will be starting up that project shortly. So that is a dispute that is going to be resolved. And that is exciting because it's been on pause for over 2 years now. And so because that one will close out, Southern Appalachian is ready to start on the Jenkins Valley donation easement as well. And so we have plans to get that started in the next few months. We just submitted the updated appraisal for Splendor Valley Farm to the state and feds for their review. So my understanding is typically the feds take like about 3 months to review an easement appraisal. It has to go through this technical review process, and then once that's approved, there's some basic title work that has to update, and then we can get to closing. Since the government shut down, that appraisal review process, we were told recently, has been prolonged significantly. So I'm anticipating 3 to 6 months for that. So we have an extension request because of the delays caused by the USDA, but it's just, I don't even want to talk about it. It's ridiculous. So yeah, federal shutdown definitely has done a number on this federally funded easement. Okay, I think we talked about David Rogers already closing. We had a meeting with the Rogers Farm Trust on the 23rd. So that was a meeting with the trustees. So 2 of the landowners and then the farm owner, so farm manager, David Rogers. So David Rogers, Craig Rogers, Mary Jo Ball, and all of their children. So the trust lines out, well, an interpretation of the trust document says that, and Amy can talk with maybe itty-bitty about this.
An interpretation.
Yeah, that the beneficiaries have some potential, I don't know, interest in.
No, they definitely have
Yeah.
interest in it. It's
Yeah.
just a question of, or do they get to call the shots?
Okay.
So, all right. So,
Do we need to? Yeah, no, I didn't know if we need to go in closed session to talk about it.
yeah, probably because we're still negotiating the purchase.
Yeah. You guys want to move in closed session to talk a little bit more about this one?
Do we need to?
We don't need to talk about it like in the meeting, but if you want to talk about it, we need to go into closed session. We are working with Amy and our other attorney on this, and so we're determining that next steps.
So it sounds like you don't really need anything from us.
No.
So I'm okay.
Not at this
with just
stage.
proceeding.
We can update you next
Yeah.
meeting if something happens. Perfect. All right. So that is all for the easement updates. Then I think next up is the presentation, and then we'll talk ordinance. All right. So as I mentioned, the landowner is not able to be here today. She had a doctor's appointment she had to attend. But we did have a very, we had a very successful farm visit last week before? Last week. Whew, yeah, it's been a couple weeks. With Mark and Joel and Kyle. They all came out to the visit, so we had a great visit out in Fairview. This is really just a recap of the previous presentation we had, so that just as a reminder, and then we'll have a chance for those that attended to ask, share their experience, and then others to ask questions. So this is just a reminder of what this was our first easement with Dorothy and David Snedden, closed a handful of years ago, back in 22. And then this just showing how the 3 parcels work together. So A is the existing protected property. We have our phase 2, and then our phase 3 over here. All right. So phase 2 was that was mostly forested, but did have a crop field along the road. There's an existing residential, there's an existing house on the property, and then just a small farmstead area reserved next to it. We did locate this at the visit, and all right, and then the other parcel, 65 acres, also has, this was something we discussed at the visit with the board. Dorothy doesn't want, to do much with the property other than, manage the forest, but would like to have a reserved home and farmstead area to be able to manage in the future. So both of these are within the Fairview Conservation Focus Area. We have had preliminary title review on both of them. And then these are the estimates for transaction costs for these two projects. This would be coming from the annual conservation easement fund that the county budgets. And this, with another request that LCAB has, would completely reserve the full funding for this fiscal year.
Are we gonna be taking a vote on this?
Yes.
Don't we need to add it to our agenda?
Yes, it was. I put it on the agenda on here, but I saw that it wasn't on the printed agenda. So it's on this one. If you want, we want to vote to update the agenda and then vote on it.
Are all board members here or just a quorum?
Just a quorum.
Typically, in order to update an agenda at this stage, you would need all board members to be present. You also have a notice issue if the agenda wasn't published, so you can put that off to the next one. That would be my recommendation, unless you need to get this done.
We do need to get this done. Okay.
Was it on the published agenda and you just didn't print out like it?
It was not, this
It
was
wasn't.
not on my radar.
Okay, so you cannot add items to an agenda in the meeting? I thought you could do
You
that.
can, but typically it requires all of the board, not just a quorum. Hold on, let me
I'm just one short.
You're Kyle Short.
And Chase.
And Chase. Oh, yeah, so we're not even close.
Just wondering.
That's a good question, actually.
Can you do an email vote?
Hang on here.
What'd you say?
Can you do an email vote?
I don't think we can do an email vote, but we could do potentially a phone call. Because the majority, the quorum is all here, or, we have a quorum in person. Yeah, this is totally my fault. I was making sure we had the ordinance on there and kind of blanked on that piece.
So what she's looking at, basically, we're looking at total 96 acres, so two additional pieces of property, and then that's the transaction cost, right?
That's correct.
Can you go back to the map, just so I can see the two pieces again? I know you showed this to us before, but while we're waiting, I was just gonna look at it again. So A is the larger track.
A is the existing track.
Oh, A is the existing track, thank you.
This is on Brush Creek Circle?
It's on Lower Brush Creek Road.
Okay. Okay.
So we're up this way is King Creek, and it's I'm trying to think of
It's right on the road there. You can see the horse fencing all out in front of it.
so
It's actually black.
It's black.
Okay.
But
So maybe he's available.
view from the road.
Okay, sweet. We can do it with majority.
We are good with the majority.
Yeah, we just need to have a vote to amend the agenda to add this.
Motion to amend our agenda and add the Sneddon donation easement to the agenda.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. Alrighty, so yeah, Mark, Joel, do you have anything you want to add about your experience on the farm?
Well, this really was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the property is beautiful over there. It's a nice area. The forested part of it's a little rough right now because of the Helene, but I think there's a lot of potential there.
And she has spent a good amount of money trying to get it cleaned
Yeah.
up, because I can't remember if I mentioned this last time, but the 30-ish acres had straight line wind go through it, with Helene, missed a bunch of her barns and just plowed through that neighbor property. And so she spent a good amount of money trying to get that sorted. And then also, we plan to do a forest management plan as part of the baseline document. So,
Did y'all take any pictures like you usually do? No, okay.
yeah.
It took a lot of time just to keep her, entertained and in line a little bit, so.
Okay.
She's a very, very interesting, sweet woman,
Okay.
and was super excited to talk about property.
Okay.
She's very passionate about conservation.
She is.
Very passionate.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah, she's the land she acquired was, right adjoins her pretty much, and, it kind of is part of a set. And if she has her way, she'll just kind of continue on.
Yes.
She's definitely.
She's talking to neighbors.
She wants it all in her backyard.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so far, I mean, we closed an easement 4 or so years ago with them, and they've been absolutely, easy landowners to work with.
And the reason, because it was 2 different parcels is why we had to do this.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're not touching.
Yeah, too bad, because then it costs more than what it would otherwise.
But that being said, both parcels could be separate farms, or working for us in the future. So that's a benefit of having, kind of a small house site and a small farmstead area on each, because technically they could be, that's something we're trying to think a bit more of, like, can this parcel be its own farm in the future? Someone could stay and live there.
Well, it's exciting that someone that's done this is, interested in then purchasing more land and putting more in conservation and continuing to that they've had such a positive experience, right? That they want to continue to do more of this work. So that's great.
Yes.
Yeah. I will make a motion to approve the transaction cost for the Sneddon donation easement.
Can I have a motion on the floor to approve? Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Next on the agenda is farmland preservation ordinance update. Amy?
Actually, I'm gonna let you go through. I just sort of approved everything.
Yeah. Okay, so the steps, Amy, you're welcome to chime in, but the steps we took, we shared it via email with you. Before we shared it with you, Amy looked at the model ordinance for the state. She looked at the required changes that were in that the bill. And then there's also this kind of recommended checklist that all ordinances have. And so Amy took all those documents, and she took our document and she made all of the changes that were recommended and required. And so within the printed and the emailed version that you have, we left the required changes that the bill made in red, so you could see what those were. And so I'll scroll to a couple of them. And okay. So there is this monitoring of EVAD properties section, just saying maintaining detailed records of EVAD properties. And so this is something that Martha and I have actually been thinking of already. We monitor our easements every year. We just haven't had the capacity to actually physically monitor all the EVAD properties. Luckily, a lot of the EVAD properties already have easements on them, so they're already being monitored. But our hope is that we'll be starting to do that, even if it's just a review of aerial imagery every year. All right, and then this section is really the to add the rezoning of farmland to this public hearing section. And so my assumption is that this is because there's been issues across the state and they want to make sure that these ag advisory boards can have these public hearings to address issues around rezoning of farmland that wasn't necessarily in the ordinance before. So this allows us, essentially, if there's any, situation where there's proposed condemnation of VAD or EVADs or rezoning of areas that are in a VAD and EVAD, we would be able to have a public hearing
So
to
it's,
address it.
I read it that it's not that we're able, I thought we were required to if there's a rezoning. I thought that, like, when I first read this, when the state passed it, I was like, oh, we're gonna have to have all these hearings around rezoning. Was when I read the state statute, which I was like, oh, that's gonna be, that's gonna add.
Be an issue.
Well, I'm not saying an issue, I'm just saying it's gonna definitely be something we're gonna have to stay on top of because of this county. I would say there's certainly the potential, right, that we're having some rezoning with that. So that was how I read it, that it wasn't like, oh, we can, it was we shall. So what was your reading of it?
I saw the may, and I thought that it didn't mean.
Now, this was months ago when I read it.
Right.
Right, I just remember being like, oh, we've got to get on top of this because this is something legally we're required to do with the way when I first read it.
In general, that's the legal interpretation. May means can, and then shall mean you must. So I think that the language that I read was may.
This appears may, but I was looking a little farther down saying, okay, upon receiving a request to hold a hearing, so they shall. So if we get a request, we have to. We get a request saying, you need to hold a public meeting, then we do have to do that within 10 business days of the request.
How often have you received such requests in the past?
I think I don't think I've ever had a request. I know that other counties have.
My point is, I don't think it'll be quite as burdensome as it may appear to be.
Yeah, because it was just condemnation, it wasn't rezoning.
Yeah,
right?
correct.
So that's one reason.
Why we have it.
With adding the rezoning. And I wondered if this was coming because there's certainly been a push at the state because we're losing farmland in North Carolina very significantly. And so I was thinking that this was coming out of legislation around really trying to pay better attention to that and not necessarily losing farmland. It's where I thought the legislation was coming from. And that's why I thought, okay, they're wanting us to make sure that we're paying careful attention to that.
That makes sense, for sure.
So it does, okay, that's a condemnation for rezoning, but now we shall provide public notice. So there's no if.
Right, that's not.
That is something that like is on us to.
When we get the request, we have to do public notice within 10 days, and then it says we have to same notice notified public hearing, within the 30 days.
Okay. So what does that look like for us? Like what, from your reading of it, like how does this, with the rezoning, like how are you seeing this impacting us on this board? Like what is it that we should, be aware of?
I've been up to my eyeballs in election stuff. I haven't looked at this in a while. But you mean in terms of what the notice would look like?
Well, I'm just trying to think like what is this process? Like what kind of like what triggers it, right? And then the process. I mean, and if it's better to come back next time and talk about it, that's fine.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Then I think, because I mean we've got the statute down, so that's your high level. Now we need to start.
Now we need to see how we
implement the granular, how we're actually going to put it into practice.
Okay.
We can be ready for that. I can be ready for that.
And we also Evan at the state, or Evan Davis at the state, my understanding is that there have been other counties that have had more of these public hearing requests.
Okay.
And I just saw recently that they are doing kind of like a training, showing that here's how other soil and water district ag advisory boards have like the process honed in and how they are dealing with it as a staff.
Okay.
So on our end, we can reach out and kind of look into that piece of it, and see how it's working for others.
That sounds good. And I wonder if Evan, because Evan's gonna know this real well. I wonder if like he could just do one to give us the insight, because I was just assuming really of why this was being done. And I wasn't there when they did it, so I don't know for sure. That was just an assumption on my part. But Evan would know, and he could probably, even if he just joined us like via virtual for 10 minutes, he could tell us like what the impetus was to put this legislation in. And kind of provide us a little guidance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this would be like if something was in agriculture and was getting rezoned to not agriculture, and it's in bad EBAD conservation easement already, that this would.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, an example of that we've seen is a DOT, with the condemnation of taking a section of an easement, like
Nelson's.
Yeah. And so in that scenario, I believe that we asked David if he wanted us to do a public hearing, and he had said no at that point, but that was early days before we realized it wasn't, still not even resolved. But I don't believe, since I've been here, we've never been like required to do it. We've not had people asking us to do a hearing, but it sounds like as things change, it might increase more. So, but yeah, okay. So Amy will take a look at, kind of that piece of it. We'll look at the process that other districts are doing, and then reach out to Evan and see if he can join the March meeting, and answer some specific questions about that. In terms of, this is the language that they're recommending to put in the ordinance. So in terms of compliance, our ordinance complying with, the state requirements, this ordinance does comply.
Okay, so you need a motion to adopt the changes. Motion to adopt the farmland preservation ordinance updates.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Awesome, thank you. So next steps for ordinance is we'll get it on the commissioner's agenda, and then they'll adopt it as it changed.
Avril's gonna want like the full
red line.
Just at least a presentation.
Yes, yeah, I will do that. We are planning to be at the March 17th because it's Ag Proclamation blah 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 day, and so with the Sneddon presentation as well as a couple from LCAB, so potentially that would be a good time because it's Ag. Like we could do a bunch of farmland stuff.
Just make sure you had a chance to talk to Evan and really understand like more about why they're doing this too, just so we're all clear. If there's questions, because right now I still kind of have questions about like from the state and just how that impacts us.
Well, then we also can wait until, we don't have to bring it on Ag Awareness Day. We can wait until after the next board meeting and then bring it afterwards to make sure we have clarity, or we just talk to Evan on the phone. Yeah.
Just, I mean, whatever you want to do, just so I can, in case there's questions, just so we're really clear of kind of why this legislation came to be. And
Can we get a printed copy of that if we want to write questions for you or something?
Sure.
Coming on.
Yeah. Looking for another copy.
Anything else? To move to the next one, announcements and discussions. Anybody? No? Okay. I don't have anything else on the agenda, so I would take a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll make it.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Have a second. All right, all those in favor?
We
All
just
opposed?
enjoy the.
We're